Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, September the 18th. We finally have a tropical storm, a named tropical storm, Gabrielle, in the central Atlantic Ocean. Kind of struggling right now. It has 50 mile per hour sustained winds. Could very well become a hurricane later on in its life cycle, far away from the U.S. East Coast. However, it certainly can have an impact on Bermuda over the next several days or so. There was another tropical wave way out in the far eastern Atlantic. That certainly can become a threat for the U.S. East Coast somewhere around that first week of October, but a long way to go before we get to that point of time here. Now, here is the latest map from NOAA's National Hurricane Center. Again, we have a named tropical storm, Gabrielle. This turned out to be one of the longest stretches in decades without a tropical storm or hurricane in the Atlantic Basin, from late August through the middle part of September. Again, the climatological peak time for tropical activity in the Atlantic Basin. This year, we had no named storms, no tropical storms, no hurricanes in that time period, roughly from the latter part of August until the middle of September. And again, that hasn't happened in many, many decades in the Atlantic Basin. This system, again, struggling right now in the midst of some dry air. Could very well become a hurricane as it pushes off over the upcoming weekend towards Bermuda. Here is the island of Bermuda. Certainly some concern that this could hit Bermuda, or at least have some kind of an impact on Bermuda later this weekend into the early part of next week. However, as far as the U.S. East Coast is concerned, looks safe from that point of view. This system should curve away and then head on out into the waters of the North Atlantic. Meanwhile, again, there is another system not even shown on this map way down here in the far eastern Atlantic Ocean. That is something we'll have to watch, not for next week, but for the following week, the last part of September into the first few days of October. Again, there's another tropical wave right now over the far eastern Atlantic. Well, let's walk through last night's 0Z run of the GFS. This is from tropicaltidbits.com. All these maps from the GFS will be from that website, tropicaltidbits.com. This is a forecast of the total precipitation amounts, be it rain or snow, over the next 10 days. A couple of interesting areas here, again, over the next 10 days. First of all, a lot of precipitation over the heartland here, from the south central states across much of the Mississippi Valley into the northern plains and the upper part of the Midwest, again, over the next 10 days or so. Another interesting area, the southern half of California, looks like they'll get in on some rainfall over the next few days, starting to get into that time period where we may get more and more threats of rain in California. And again, this is over the next few days. Kind of interesting here that the southern half of California gets some rain fall over the next several days. And we'll see in a moment here the snowfall map for the next 10 days. Certainly getting into the end of September, into the early and middle part of October, you can see some snow, some of those higher elevations of, for example, the Sierra Nevada mountains in eastern California. Meanwhile, a lot of rainfall over southern Florida, and still some signs of monsoonal moisture here flowing, kind of moisture flowing to the north from western Mexico, from the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean into the Four Corners states. Can produce some decent rainfall amounts over places like New Mexico, Arizona, even Colorado and Utah over the next 5 to 10 days or so. Now here's the forecast map of total snowfall over the next 10 days or so. We'll, of course, increasingly show this map as we get closer and closer to the winter season. Indeed, some snow expected over the next 10 days or so over some of those northern Rocky Mountain states here, the higher elevations of central and western Colorado, across Wyoming into southwestern Montana. Again, over the next 10 days or so, places like Glacier National Park in Montana can certainly see some snowfall. Notice here a little bit put out right here over eastern California. This will become a place with more and more snowfall here as we get into the month of October, and starting to show a little bit here over the next 10 days. This takes us towards the end of September, all the way out to September 28th. And this is certainly one area we'll be looking for snow as we transition into the month of October, starting to show up on the maps here as we go through the second half of September. Now, the next two set of maps are from the ensemble run of the GFS, and what we're looking at are 5-day averages. In this particular case, we're looking at the 5-day average of the 850 millibar temperature anomaly here. So this is the current 5-day period, and we'll see quite a large part of the nation will experience above normal temperatures here over the next couple of weeks here. We're going, again, 5-day average here. This is the current 5-day period. Let's move forward here in time here. This is now days 4 to 8, extending from September 21st to the 26th. Again, much of the nation above normal temperatures, and certainly much of Canada well above normal temperatures in this time period. In other words, the next 10 days or so will be quite different than the last 10 days or so across much of the nation, which experienced cooler than normal conditions for the most part for the first half of September. But going forward here, at least in the next 5 or 10 days, maybe 15 days or so, odds favor more warmer than normal conditions. Now, we'll keep on going farther out in time. This is now towards the last week of September here, September 25th to September 30th, continuation of warmer than normal conditions on average over the eastern 2/3 of the nation. Notice, however, out across the western states, below normal conditions here, and that may very well be the pattern as we go into October with another colder than normal air mass moving in from the eastern Pacific into the western states at the end of September, going into that first week of October. We'll go out a little bit farther in time. This takes us into the end of September all the way out to October 4th time frame here, days 12 to 16. Again, above normal conditions across the eastern 2/3 of the nations, perhaps the warmest being over the Hudson Bay region of Canada. But again, notice out here in California, kind of an interesting pattern here with cooler than normal conditions as we end the month of September and go into the beginning of October. Now, I mentioned earlier, I do believe that second tropical wave in the far eastern Atlantic could become a threat for the East Coast somewhere around that last few days of September, the first few days of October. In other words, not next week, but the following week. This coming up here, I'll show one of the reasons why I kind of think odds are a little bit higher for possible impact that first week of October. We're looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps for rolling 5-day averages. Again, this is the current 5-day period here with generally normal to above normal heights here at the 500 millibar level over the 5-day period that we are now in. Let's move forward here and just watch as we evolve here. This is now at days 6 to 10, the 23rd to the 28th, again from the ensemble run of the GFS. And then we go in the latter part of September into the early part of October. This is days 10 to 14. And remember, I always focus in on potential for high pressure ridging over the southeastern part of Canada as a possible red flag that there can be some tropical systems that undercut that ridge over southeastern Canada in moving from east to west across the southwestern Atlantic, maybe the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. This is at the end of September going into early October here. Indeed, it's going a little bit farther in time. This is as far out as this particular model run goes. Days 12 to 16, we're talking September 29th to October 4th. And here we go. We have this high pressure ridging setting up here over southeastern Canada, something we'll keep a track of here as we go through next week and into the following week. Again, we're at the first few days here of October. And again, out in the western states, maybe even a deeper trough than this is suggesting, with colder than normal conditions, California, Washington, Oregon. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps. This is the conventional run, the operational run of the GFS, not the ensemble run from last night at 0Z. Drying conditions here in the Mid-Atlantic region. We had some beneficial rainfall yesterday and last night. A place like D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City, all as a result of that coastal low that never was a named tropical storm. That's debatable. It could have been certainly a named tropical storm. It produced as much as 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts across places from the Outer Banks to southeastern Virginia coastline here. It's weakening, moving off to the north and east, and the big player over the next few days across the northeastern states, this very strong high-pressure system. By the way, blue here on this map represents snowfall here. We'll see that more and more as we go into the month of October here. But this very strong high-pressure system by Saturday stationed over southeastern Canada, and this is just going to dominate the scene across this part of the nation here. It looks like a comfortable, dry weekend, places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, all thanks to that strong high-pressure system over southeastern Canada. It certainly won't get hot. We'll have this clockwise flow around this high, so we'll still have kind of an onshore flow of air, which keeps a lid on temperatures this time of year in the Mid-Atlantic region and the northeastern U.S. Let's not backtrack a little bit here, and I mentioned the rainfall in California, and here we go. This is now forecast map for later today. Watch this part of the nation here over the next couple of days. Some decent rainfall amounts here for the southern half, especially for the southern half of California. This now takes us into the upcoming weekend. We'll go out a little bit farther in time. And here we go. By the time we get to Sunday, this strong high pressure system moves from around this position here today all the way to coastal New England and coastal Maine. By the time we get to the latter part of the upcoming weekend, it's still a continuation of a strong onshore flow of air here with that clockwise flow around that strong high pressure system. And as has been the case in recent days, we'll have this frontal boundary zone set up right offshore here, off the eastern seaboard here. This will be kind of an area to watch for potential moisture here that could back into some of the coastal sections of the southeastern states, and some rainfall. We talked about decent rainfall amounts over the next 5 or 10 days or so, all across the Mississippi Valley region from the south central states to the north central states. And here is some of that rainfall over the upcoming weekend. We'll go out a little bit farther in time into the early part of next week. That strong high pressure system from Canada finally moves off the coast, and here we see a reflection of that tropical system here. Again, will curve away and could have an impact on Bermuda, which happens to be right in this location here on this particular forecast map. This is for Tuesday night. If Bermuda is in fact impacted, it will be either late this weekend or during the early part of next week. And again, for the next few days, there will be a cold frontal system that will pass through the Mid-Atlantic region on Friday, and then that strong high pressure across southeastern Canada takes full control of the northeastern part of the nation for the upcoming weekend, with another weekend featuring dry, comfortably cool conditions, places like D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York City. But rainfall on the way for portions of California here over the next several days, and that rainfall certainly can extend into Nevada, and continuation of some monsoonal moisture for Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Doherty.